Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 ba da
You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
And I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. And in this episode, A Fickle Dreamland Called. Its bright lights sear the horizon of the Space-Crime Continuum. Its furnace is lit with the ink of hacks like me in our creator corner. What, was my gravelly voice not gravelly enough for you?
Lisa, let's not pretend this wasn't your seventh try.
And my throat knows it. We're talking to the cartoonist Scott Morse about This Ink Runs Cold from Alan Spiegel Fine Arts.
Yeah, this is a big episode for Comic Book Couples Counseling because it is the first one that involves one of our collaborators. We can now call Scott Morse our collaborator.
He in this interview, he kind of calls us that first, and we're like,
Well, now I'm owning it. We are collaborators with Scott Morse and José Villarrubia, who is doing all the colors on This Ink Runs Cold. We've been talking about this book for several months now. You should be well aware of it. You have only days left to back it on Kickstarter, so this is our final push. And Scott was more than happy to join us on the podcast to talk about his inspirations behind This Ink Runs Cold and why he allowed two weirdos like us to collaborate with him.
But Brad, before we get into the episode proper, we have to talk about my first WonderCon and what a smooth traveling experience it was, especially the leaving the LAX airport part.
So if you're here just for Scott Morse, you may want to skip ahead a few minutes because we've got a story to tell. WonderCon was fantastic, but, you know, we flew into LAX and... Okay, how do we tell this story? This is one of the most memorable traveling experiences of our lives, and I hope it stays that way and nothing ever tops it. Because, Lisa, we flew from Virginia, from Dulles Airport. It took about 5 hours to land. We land, we're tired, we're exhausted. You know, we're not flying first class. I'm 6'4". It's a brutal flight.
I make him sit in the middle because I don't want to touch a stranger.
Yep, and I am touching a stranger with my big old thighs. And so I was very excited to be off that plane, and I was excited to go to the bathroom. We go to the bathroom, we take turns. Then what happens? We go out of the terminal, collect our luggage. We make our way to the Enterprise rental bus, and we're about to step on the Enterprise bus when Lisa says what?
Brad, my purse! I left my purse!
What do you mean?
I left my purse by the bathrooms. I have no purse.
Back through security?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
I say, surrounded by children, mind you, and families getting on this Enterprise bus, I say, "F*** Lisa!"
He was so mad.
In a really mad voice. I wasn't proud of myself. I'm still not proud of myself that I reacted that way. And, you know, all the worst case scenarios go through your head because in Lisa's purse is not only her medication and her money, her wallet, but her ID.
And now we have to live in California because I don't have an ID to get back on a plane.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. We can figure this out. It took us, what, like 30 minutes to go from the plane to baggage to this bus. Let's rush back to baggage and see if we can get a gate pass. So we go to the baggage claim, lost and found. They say you got to go to the United desk and get a gate pass up there. We go up there. They tell us, well, obviously Lisa cannot go through security again because she does not have an ID, but we can give you a gate pass. And, we landed early in LAX. I think we landed at 11 a.m. But by this point, it's broaching on noon in LAX, and security was jammed. There were so many people in line, and it was the most agonizing process to go through that line because of the stress of, I need to find this purse before somebody takes it, right? And, I'm going through slowly. I'm shuffling through. I didn't bring any luggage with me, no backpack this time. I just had my phone and my wallet. And I eventually get through, and I start running down the terminal. And I'm looking around, and I realize, well, this is not the terminal that we came in on. Crap, what was the terminal that we came in on? I have no idea. But then I go, oh, in Lisa's purse is a tile.
That's right. This is not sponsored, but I do use a lot of tiles for all of my things.
Because you have ADHD.
I do.
And you tend to forget things, which will be relevant to our comic that is included in this Ink Runs Cold. So I called Lisa up on the phone. I was like, Lisa, pull up your tile. Where is your wallet? Can you find it? Is it still in a terminal? And she goes, yes, it's in a terminal.
It's Terminal 8. I'll never forget.
Yeah,
it's Terminal 8.
It's Terminal 8. It's by Randy's Donuts. It's by the People's Newsstand. So Terminal 8's the next terminal over. And I run as fast as I've ever run in my 40s.
It's the kind of run where a stranger will go, run, Forrest.
It's definitely the kind of run in which strangers were looking at this person and should we be concerned because this man is running so fast. And I ran so fast to the bathroom area where we had rested, and I now have a raging headache. I'm sweating like a fountain, and I have the worst indigestion. I have acid reflux already, but a good panic run like I just did just sent my stomach into full volcanic mode.
He jiggled his innards.
And I start looking, and Lisa is texting me screenshots of her tile, and I'm trying to figure out where I am within that screenshot. And then we realize she could actually share her tile location with me if I have the Tile app. So I download the Tile app. Signal is not great. I have to get onto the LAX Wi-Fi, which was also a challenge. And I was able to download the Tile. And then I could see that I was within the area of the purse, or at least where the Tile was. But I checked the seats in which we had dropped our bags before going into the restroom, and it wasn't there.
Oh, no.
But maybe, it's not the most accurate tile. So maybe it's, in the bathroom where Lisa went. And I go to the bathroom and I go, hello? Anyone in here? And if there was somebody in there, do you think they would answer some crazed panic maniac's voice? I don't think so, but I'm emboldened, and I just go into the ladies' room to look for Lisa's purse. There were no women in there, and there was also no purse.
Boo.
I checked the stalls, I checked the sink area, and then I ran back out, and I'm looking at this Tile app, and I go like, well, the Tile says it's here. I ask around the seats, and I ask strangers. I say, like, have you seen a purse? It's kind of like a croissant shape.
Yeah, it's green.
And they're like, no, and they can see that I am troubled. Again, I am sweating like a hog here. And they look concerned just to be talking to me because I know how I look in full panic mode. And there's no United gate workers around. I go to all the different gates in that terminal that are United related, and I can't find anybody. So then I go to the People's Newsstand, and I ask that person if anybody turned anything in, and there was a bar to the right of that. I go to that bar, and I talk to the bartender, and then there was a cafe that's like a fire engine branded cafe, and I asked that person. They don't know. And I'm looking at this tile. I go, well, the tile says it's here, so it's got to be around here. I start thinking, well, did somebody here take the purse? And I start evil-eyeing individuals. Like, do they look like the type of people who would put a purse in their own backpack, right? And, okay, so no luck. Well, what if somebody took the purse and threw the tile in one of these trash cans that I'm standing next to?
Sure.
And I go to the trash can and I look in, and it's filled with garbage, as an airport trash can should be. And a guy is next to the trash can charging his phone. And he goes, "You okay?" And I go, "No, I'm not okay." I tell him what's going on. He goes, "Ooh." He's like, "Yeah, it could be in the trash." He agrees with me. I was like, "All right, well, I'm going to dig into this thing. I have no gloves." He goes, and he stops me. He goes, "Oh, hold on. Those are, I think, double lined. So if you take the lid off, and then you could lift the bag into the air and then look through, because they're see-through trash bags, and see if you see any kind of purse-related stuff in there." I was like, "Oh, good idea." So I take the lid off the trash can. I pull the inner lining out. I hold it to the light, and I start cupping the trash.
Yeah.
You know, I'm probing around. I'm holding it like a sack, and I'm feeling around the bag, and I don't see anything. And you know, and then I like put my head practically into the bag, and I'm again cupping this trash, and it's not there. Okay, well, right next to it is a recycling bin. Let's go through this process again. I take the lid off. I pull the inner lining out. I start cupping the bag, like
Cupping and groping,
like a big old testicle, really.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
right? Like that's the motion
100%.
that I'm describing here, and I can't find it in the recycling bag. Well, like every 20 feet in an airport is a trash bag, and so a trash can, and so I do the two behind me and I do the two in front of me. So in total, I do this 6 times with 6 different trash bags, and again. This is a crowded LAX airport. People are looking at me. Security never comes, but I'm waiting for security to come. What does finally arrive are the workers at that particular gate.
Thank God.
I go there and I tell them what's going on, and they're like, "Oh, no, I don't know." I was like, "You got to go back to baggage and file a claim." And I say, I will eventually, but look at my phone. This is the tile. It's saying that the purse is here nearby. Do you have it locked in your desk right here or in one of the other desks? And they go, "No, we don't lock anything in here." And I say, "Well, what about this weird metal box to the left of your desk that says United? Like, is there anything in this box? Would you lock anything in this?" And they say, "No, we don't put anything in there." I was like, "Then why is there a lock on this? Why is there a lock on this?" And I'm in full panic mode, and you know, I'm really aware that I'm becoming one of those customers that I could not stand when I was a retail worker at Barnes & Noble. And I did not want to be aggressive in any way. I was really trying to maintain and manage my panic. But I was really starting to panic because, again, like, are we going to rent a car and drive home from LA? How are we going to get Lisa an ID again? Like, are we going to spend the entire weekend at the California DMV? I don't know. And I look at my phone one more time, and I start to see the tile move.
Oh, no.
And I really start to panic. So I start looking around at everybody. Okay, all right, somebody's got Lisa's purse. Someone's moving. And I see a cleaning woman, and she has actually just gone to one of the trash cans that I was at, and she is in the process of emptying that trash can and putting it in her bag. And this is like, I don't know, 100 feet away from this United desk. And she starts moving, and she's going towards these metal doors that exit to the left of the terminal. So she's going to exit. And once she exits, if the purse is there, it could go forever, right? Like, it could be gone forever. Mm-hmm. So I run over. I stop my conversation with the United terminal or gate worker, and I run to the cleaning lady, and I tell the cleaning lady what's going on. And she sort of understands what I'm saying, but doesn't quite. Again, is it a language issue, or is it just trying to interpret Brad's crazed dialogue at this point? So eventually she agrees to let me go through the many bags of trash that are on her cart. And I do so, and she gives me a pair of gloves. And there's actually another woman there who goes, "Hey, before you go digging in that trash, put on some gloves."
Smart lady.
And that was just a traveler. And I said, "Oh, can I borrow these gloves?" And she gives me these gloves. I put these latex gloves in. And then I go to town. And I am spilling coffee onto the terminal floor. I am spilling diapers onto the terminal floor. I am making a liquid mess in Terminal 8. And to the point where she goes and gets a mop, and she is now mopping up after me as I tear through these many, many bags of trash.
Oh, God.
And the story I'm telling you, all of this occurs over the course of an hour and a half. As I'm desperately searching through Terminal 8 for Lisa's purse. And as I'm going through this trash, and as I'm making this liquid slush on Terminal 8, I get a page overhead. Mr. Gullickson to gate whatever. The gate, 100 feet away. And I run over there, and there is a gentleman in like a baggage claim attire, and he's holding Lisa's purse.
Wow.
And I go, oh my God, you are a lifesaver. You have literally saved my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Can I give you money? Can I tip you?
To Brad's credit, he also offered to tip the trash lady.
And the trash lady
She would not take cash.
Wouldn't take it, and this gentleman wouldn't take it either. And I said, well, can I give you a hug? And he goes, yeah, man, you can give me a hug. And so I hug this guy by the gate, and I go, man, what is your name? And he goes, my name's Doug. And I go, my name's Brad. And Doug, I'm serious. Like, you saved not only my vacation, but you've saved my life. You've saved my life. I just keep saying that over and over again. And he's laughing because clearly he finds my demeanor amusing. And he's, I shake his hand one last time and he goes away, and I thank the gate workers. I go and I thank the trash lady, and I'm getting like so much relief from everybody in this terminal, or everyone around this United Gate. I get a high five from somebody. This guy who was just about to board, he was in his boarding group, and he goes, man, I'm so glad you got that resolved before I got on this plane, just so I could enjoy my flight. I'm, walking back down the terminal again with a raging headache and this horrible searing pain in my stomach and throat. And this woman comes up to me and she grabs me by the arm as I'm walking, and she looks directly in my eyes and she says, honey, I am so relieved for you. And I say to her, I am too. Thank you. Thank you. And then she leaves and she goes back to sit down at the gate, and I proceed to the men's room and I boil my flesh. I get that water as hot as I possibly can. I get sanitizer, I get soap, I'm scrubbing up like I'm an ER doctor. And I exit the bathroom, I take a photo of Lisa's purse and I text it to her, and her text response is OMG.
Yes.
And we've been communicating, Lisa and I, this whole time. The signal is not great, so I couldn't stand where the tile said and talk to her. I had to keep moving about like 300 feet to get a signal to talk to Lisa. And, we're sending texts back and forth, and she's like, why can't you get the tile to make a noise? And I said, I don't know. When I click on the purple icon, nothing happens. She's like, you got to click on the purple icon. I'm like, Lisa, I'm trying to click on the purple icon. It's not happening. But she gets the photo. She texts me back, OMG. And now tell the listeners your side of the story.
Okay, so I'm left by baggage claim with our suitcase and our 2 backpacks, and I'm just like sitting on the floor, devastated and so embarrassed. And I'm like searching on my phone, like what happens if you lose something on the airport. And what they don't tell you is if you file a claim, if you have a lost item, they will not give you the item directly. They will only mail the item to your home.
Right, which would not help us.
So I'm like, the last thing I want to do is file a claim, because then you will not get your item back. And Brad is calling and like he's panicked, but like when he's panicked, he sounds angry to me, and like my little child self like comes out
and like when I said woo, Lisa, I was angry.
He sounded really mad.
I was mad. And again, I apologize for that. And it was, it's ugly behavior. Screw me for being that way.
I get it. But like time is passing, and like what's weird is I'm a person who like in like when I've messed up, I cry. And I have not managed to cry. And I'm like, just like sitting there and I just feel awful. And I'm just like, and I'm thinking like, do I call my friend Amy? Like I can't call Brad. Do I call my friend Amy? What if she doesn't pick up? And then I have to explain the whole thing. And then finally I'm like, screw it. I'm calling my mom. Even though I know exactly what she's going to do. But I call her anyway. And I go like, and the second she picks up the phone, I start sobbing. And I'm like, Mom, I've really messed up. And I explain the whole situation. And Mom goes, well, Lisa, there is just one thing to do. And she goes, should I say my prayer? And I'm like, yes, please. And my mom goes, okay. Baby Jesus, lost and found, bring Lisa's purse around. Okay, I did it. Okay, well, that's all that needs to be done. I will talk to you later. I love you. Goodbye. And we get off the phone, and 30 seconds later, Brad texts me a picture of the purse. And I'm so mad that I called my mom because now I have to give her the satisfaction that the baby Jesus prayer worked. And I text her Brad's picture of the purse, and she replies, "Thank you, Father. Amen."
And your mom has a reputation for finding things using this prayer.
Yeah. Oh, she is the finder.
Right. It's family lore.
Yes. That prayer, for some reason, I have used the prayer. It has never worked for me one time. But literally every time my mom does it, the item turns up.
So
it has worked on diamond rings.
Yeah.
It has worked on jewelry I have borrowed and lost. It has worked on everything. Like literally one time, the stone fell out of her engagement ring from the 70s. She said the baby Jesus prayer, and she found the stone sitting on our welcome mat right outside the house.
What about that time your brother lost his glasses on the beach? I remember your mom did the prayer. Did Joe find the glasses?
No, I guess we should probably cut that out because that ruins the story. But no, those glasses were gone.
Yeah, they went into the ocean.
They were being worn by a nearsighted dolphin.
Our WonderCon weekend was saved. And honestly, like, my faith in a lot of ways was restored. Like, I love the fact that your mom did that prayer and then the purse was found. But, going into this trip, Lisa and I desperately needed this vacation. Like everyone out there, we are extremely stressed about the state of this country and the state of this world and the people in it. And I've gone to many dark places about humanity over the last 6 months to a year. And having this experience where I was interacting with all kinds of people, like every type of person I interacted with in Terminal 8 trying to find this purse. I must have spoken to 50 people over the course of that hour and a half. And all of them were positive. And my brain went to this cynical place where like somebody stole it. Right, and threw the tile in the trash. And no, somebody found it and turned it in. And the thing is, I never even asked Doug where he had the purse. I was so relieved. I was like, was it in the desk? Was it in that weird metal box near the desk? Where was it? Was it in a floor below the terminal? In an office somewhere? I don't know. Doug had it. Doug gave it to me. I don't care where it was. I just know that it all worked out. And I had all these lovely exchanges. And if you were to lose an item again in a critical way that you did, I need to remember this story, and I should never ever react again the way that I did react in that hot second when you told me you had lost your purse.
Yeah, like forgetting something is like the worst feeling. And the only way I could explain it was like, well, if I noticed that I was losing it, I would not have lost it in the first place.
Yeah.
All of that being said, like from the time I got off of the phone with my mom to you returning from Terminal 8 with my purse, I was like sobbing, like a child, like
in
a
baggage.
Toddler, sitting on the floor, sobbing. And not one person asked how I was doing.
Well, that stinks. If you see a sobbing woman on the floor of an airport, maybe just go up and
Check
say,
in.
"Are you okay?
You doing okay?
Do you need help?" And I'm sorry that you didn't have the positive human interactions.
It's okay. I
that
didn't
did.
actually need any help. As many white women sitting around crying do not actually need any help.
I don't know, but maybe they do. Wouldn't it have been
maybe.
nice if just somebody checked in with you just so you can say, like, no, I'm okay, and tell your story, right?
Yeah.
I would like to think that if I saw a sobbing woman on the floor of baggage in LAX that I would investigate.
Yeah.
But, there you go. And that was the beginning of our WonderCon experience.
Yeah.
And WonderCon itself was fabulous. We had a great time. We spoke with many people. We got to connect with all kinds of friends, Jeremy over at the Geekly Grind and Lance over at Comic Book Keepers and Eamon Winkle and Weston. We all had multiple dinners and breakfasts together. We had lunch with David Hyde and the rest of the Superfan podcast group. And we got to go see their very first panel.
It was so fun.
With Pornsack Pitchashot and Marco Finnegan. And it was a great panel. We met up with Dan Slott and had a lovely conversation with him and Mitch Gerrits. Mitch showed us something from the upcoming Vigilante issue.
Should we say that? Is that allowed?
We can say that he showed us something. We're not going to say what it was, but it has haunted us since he showed it. It's so brilliant.
We also saw Sarah Meyer.
We saw Sarah. We saw so many great people, and it was, a really relaxing time. We visited Jack Kirby and Roz Kirby's grave and spent some time with them. Lisa had never done that before.
Yeah, it was really nice.
And it's in a really lovely location right next to a Costco.
We also got a ton of comics, which we might talk about like on a future intro, or maybe we'll do it on a Patreon. You don't know. You don't know where we're going to talk about our new comics.
You can go to our socials and see many of the comics that we purchased. Lisa, I think, bought more comics than I did.
I bought so many comics, and weirdly, none of them are on social media because when I would...
That's not true. I put a bunch of them on.
Okay, good. Good.
Not all of them, but I put a bunch of them on.
Okay, great.
You bought a lot of romance comics, and you started your Bob's Big Boy comics collection.
So excited.
So, yeah, it was a great time. We really treated it like a vacation. It wasn't really a working experience the way that we do New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con. And I'd like to keep WonderCon that way, actually.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful start of the con season.
It's an amuse-bouche.
And I would really recommend it to anybody who's just like looking to gear up for the madness of maybe some of the bigger cons. Although like WonderCon's still pretty big.
Yeah.
It's still pretty big. And it is a comic con. Lots of dealers. We bought Daredevil #5.
Yeah.
The first issue with Wally Wood art.
Yellow costume.
Yeah, 1964. So that was like our big purchase of the con. And yeah. So you're either really happy that we told this story, or you're like, oh my God, it's nearly 30 minutes into this episode and we haven't got to Scott Morse yet. Well, we're here, friends, to talk a little bit more about This Ink Runs Cold. Again, there is less than a week left to the Kickstarter. Please go to the link in the show notes and jump on over to that page. You can get this book in 2 formats. You can get the colorized version with José Villarrubia's amazing colors. And, José's the guy who is coloring Kelly Jones on the Dracula books, and he's also recoloring all of Richard Corbin's work for Dark Horse Comics right now. So it's really an honor to have him working on one of our little stories.
What This Ink Runs Cold, short stories from the Space-Crime Continuum is an anthology of 1-page comics where the only prompt was write a story that either is sci-fi, crime, or a mixture of those 2 things. And this was something that Scott did to get out of something of a creative rut.
Yeah, crisis, really.
Right.
After he was let go from Pixar, which he will talk about in this conversation.
And so he reached out to a myriad of writers, both writers and love, like Stan Sakai and Michael Bendis and Mike Allred. And then also nobodies, like Brad and Lisa Gullickson.
Yeah, he had an open casting call, basically.
Right.
And over a year ago, we submitted a short story to him, which he promptly rejected.
As he should. What a terrible idea I had.
But he then, months later, reached back out to us and he said, why don't you come up with another idea? Pitch me another idea. Pitch me another script. And then that's the script that ultimately became the ADHD PI and the story that's in This Ink Runs Cold.
I just love the idea of a one-page story format. The idea that you have to, like, condense something down, or we thought we had to condense something down to, like, okay, we need to get a full thought into one page, where other people took a completely different direction and were like, oh, well, maybe I have enough time to establish a vibe or establish a question. Like, there's so many things you can do with one page.
Yeah, and it's all represented in This Ink Runs Cold. To have somebody like Scott Morse, who has worked with Kyle Baker on Plastic Man. He has done a Batman story. He's done an Elektra story. We know him most famously for Soulwind,
which is his first comic, which is ridiculous because it's brilliant.
It's one of my top 10 favorite comics of all time. It is one of those books that I recommend to everyone when they're saying, oh, give me something that I've never heard about before. I go, oh, have you read Soulwind? And 9 times out of 10, they haven't. For whatever reason, that never cracked into the discourse the way that some stories do. But it is a book that keeps getting reprinted, and there is a new hardcover of it from Oni Press that I think is an essential book to be on a person's shelf. So you should go order that if you haven't already. So then to get him to interpret these scripts from so many different types of storytellers, it's just magnificent to see. There's such an education within this book. I'm aching to read the entire thing. If you go to the Kickstarter page, you can read our one page. It's part of the advertisements, the ADHD PI, and I hope you like it. But you're not going to buy this book because it has a story by Brad and Lisa in it. You're going to buy this book because it has stories by Stan Sakai and Matt Wagner and Dave McKean. It's legends and newbies all coming together and being interpreted by one singular voice and one singular colorist. I'm super stoked. We should also mention that if you're going to San Diego Comic-Con in July, there will be an option to pick up your copy early at San Diego Comic-Con. And there's going to be many writers attending San Diego Comic-Con who are involved in This Ink Runs Cold. So you'll be able to get this book signed by a bunch of them, including Brad and Lisa.
If you can find us.
If you can find us. Because we don't have a table. We're roaming. But I think they're going to do a little bit of an event gathering all the writers involved in this anthology at Alan Spiegel Fine Arts booth, where Scott will be all weekend.
I never had my very best friend sign my yearbook for my senior year of high school because of all of the anxiety of like, well, this is the last time they sign my yearbook, so it's got to be really good. And I tried to put off me signing their yearbook because of the pressure. But I'm not going to make that same mistake with This Ink Runs Cold. We're going to get everyone to sign it, including ourselves. We just have to decide if we're going to sign it, our own copy first or last.
Yeah, that's right. I'm definitely not going to let you forget, Lisa, or back out of it. So there you go. Let's go ahead and bring Scott Morse into the Love Nest to have this conversation about This Ink Runs Cold. Of course, before we do that, we do need to take a slight break and hear from our sponsors.
You wake in a hospital bed. Your hand feels heavy. There's a ringing pain in your head. Machine parts have replaced what could not be repaired with flesh. Did the doctors save you or strip you of your humanity? This is the question facing Adam in Futility Shapes, a one-shot comic live on Kickstarter now. Created by Edward Kane and Dave Fowler, Futility Shapes is a weird blend of The Terminator, The Machinist, and Mass Effect. What shapes you? The link is in our show notes, and you can visit edwardkane.net, edwardkane.net.
Hi, friends. If you enjoy comic book couples counseling, then undoubtedly you'd enjoy the Beyond the Cape podcast. They are a laid-back talk show in which every episode highlights their love of this beautiful comics medium, their own personal journey with it, and the journey of the respective artists they feature on each episode. This June will mark their second anniversary, which we certainly recognize as a massive accomplishment. So be sure to follow them on Instagram at Beyond the Cape Podcast and follow them on Spotify with the Uncensored Nerds Network. Now let's get back to the rest of our show. Okay, enough tantric teasing of Scott Morse. Here he is talking about This Ink Runs Cold, short stories from the Space-Crime Continuum. Scott, welcome to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for welcoming me.
Oh, man. This is an absolute treat. This Ink Runs Cold is a dream come true for us, and I know a lot of other aspiring comic writers and creators. But we would like to go back a year around the time this idea struck you. What was the spark?
Oh, I was getting laid off from Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I've worked in comics and animation for probably, definitely 30 plus years now. I started working for Chuck Jones my sophomore year of college at Cal Arts and left school my sophomore year and started working professionally. I was 19 when I started working with Chuck and Maurice Noble. And at the time, Maurice was kind of like my grandpa, but he was really like one of the first big professional mentors in my life as well. And he was a big advocate of encouraging people he worked with to have something of their own. So I knew I wanted to do comics as well, and that something of my own was going to be comics. So I knew I had a day job working in animation. I could afford to moonlight as a comics nerd as well. So I intended to start self-publishing, and pretty quickly didn't have to self-publish. Jim Valentino had found me at WonderCon and offered to do Soul Wind, my first book, through Image. So I was off and running when I was 21, 22, that age, getting going on comics, and then kind of hit the ground running from there. 30 years later, after a 20-year stint at Pixar, I found myself not square one, because obviously I've got a pretty good career under me, but I didn't have anything active to do at the moment. So I knew I wanted to kind of give myself a shot in the arm and really draw some comics that I hadn't drawn in a long time. Because when you're working for a big studio like Pixar, you're dedicating a lot of your time to the films. You're dedicating a lot of your time to other people's stuff and not your own stuff. And I wanted to get back to my own stuff. But at the same time, I typically have 4 or 5 projects going in my head of what my own stuff is going to be. And none of them were solid enough that I wanted to really dive in and plant a flag on them. And it occurred to me Comic-Con was coming up, and I didn't want to just do commissions of Spider-Man for people or Wolverine for people. And it occurred to me something like This Ink Runs Cold might be a good idea. Ironically, a year before, another one of my big mentors, close friend, Alan Spiegel, had passed away. And Alan, I'm always at his booth, the Alan Spiegel Fine Arts booth. He was my rep for probably the whole time I was at Pixar as well. I mean, and definitely working in animation. I've known him for 30 years as well. He was a big advocate of trying to promote new people, find new talent. That's how he found me. I was a nerd on, walking around with my portfolio at conventions, and he would force me to show not just him, but the other artists at his booth, my work, when I was nervous. So since then, I've been a big proponent of, if I see somebody with, that's shy, walking around with their work, doesn't know how to get their foot in the door, you make them open their portfolio, make them show their stuff in front of people. You have to air your dirty laundry early and kind of see if, part of being a professional is seeing if you can take the lumps, take the criticism. Anyway, instead of doing commissions, we decided to do short stories and offer out to aspiring people, people who hadn't done comics, don't really know how to get published, don't know how to get optics on their work, an opportunity to write something. as you guys know, writing one page is really hard to do.
Yeah.
So part of the challenge was to challenge people and show people, and also working with an artist. As a writer, I know, having worked with a lot of writers who just write, there is an understanding curve when you work with somebody visual to get your work up, either on a screen or into a book. It's a compromise and it's a conversation. And what you write on the page is sort of like the blue line sketch that you would ink over. It's not the final art and it's not the final writing. So I wanted to kind of also bolster a lot of the rising voices with this idea that it's going to be a little bit of a collaboration. We're going to change some things. We're going to tweak some things. You're going to see how I'll interpret your work. And not that I'm a better artist than anybody, but the conversation can sometimes make a story a little stronger than it was. So that's my long-winded answer to how this came up.
Oh, we love it. Like, one of the things we find most inspiring about comics is the collaboration factor and the idea that neither person on either end of the creativity knows what's going to happen, especially with us. Like, Brad is more visual than me, but I like, for a person who does artistic stuff, like, it's very hard for me to nail down something visually, but I just love the idea of coming out of, this long standing job and then just getting this huge injection, like what is that movie with Jason Statham where he gets the
Frank?
Yeah, you got a huge Crank style injection of collaboration. And what was that like, all of a sudden having this like influx of people and energy and stories coming at you all at once?
Oh man, it was the shot on the arm that I needed after, stepping away from working with so many friends all day long at a workplace. Because everybody you work with at a studio is hopefully better than you, and you're constantly learning from other people. So I was learning from everybody that was kind of throwing new stories at me, and it didn't matter if it was people I didn't really know or people I have known for 30 years or 40 years or even sometimes longer. There are people in the book that I went to elementary and middle and high school with. It became sort of, the secret sauce in the book is not just people who are aspiring to write professionally, but also people that have been important in my life. So there's the professional people that have been important in my life. A lot of my comics friends and family. There's the new comics friends and family that I made, like you guys. And then there's actual friends and family that are like mixed into the mix, and hopefully readers won't be able to tell the difference. Like, hopefully it'll be this blur with me kind of being the smudge tool, blurring everything together, that it's just this fever dream of weird little stories. And all these little stories were all super inspiring on their own merits, and gave me something different to look forward to each day. The cool thing about doing these one-page things is I feel like we really accomplished something with every single one of them. Each one felt like its own project, and it felt like I got something done every day. It felt like I had moved the needle every day. Every one of these pages was something new. And some of them I would draw 2 or 3 in a day, and I was really feeling it, and others I would struggle. There are a few in the book that I redrew 3 or 4 times. And there may be a stretch reward coming up where you'll get to see those, but we'll see.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The one-page story is, certainly from our point of view, one of the most challenging things to accomplish. But even as a reader, you rarely encounter them. They pop up every now and again in an anthology. Sometimes they're used as introductions to larger stories. You've talked a little bit about the appeal of the one-page story, but then here is this anthology of nothing but one-page stories and connecting them with a prologue and an epilogue. What is the compulsion? What is the joy of stringing together so many one-pagers?
So look at it like this. You're walking around a party with a lot of people, and you're walking into conversations that have already started. and maybe you're leaving conversations before they end. And that's what every single one of these one pages is it's almost like and when you're writing a screenplay, when you're working on a movie, we try to keep this in mind a lot of the time. You want to arrive at the party late and leave the party early. Like, so every scene that you're writing, you don't want to see somebody like wake up, put on their clothes, pull out their keys, unlock, like, you don't want to see all that business. You just want to get to them in the car driving and they're still hungover from the night before, because then you're wondering, like, what did I miss? So getting into some of a one page story gives you a feeling of, what have I missed ahead of this? This feels fully realized. There is hopefully it feels like there's a world around it. And then also, when you get out of it early, it makes you hunger for, I wonder what could have happened next, or I wonder how much bigger that world can be. Some of these play like a cold open in a movie. Some of them feel like, holy crap, this is the beginning of a movie and I want to see the rest of the movie, hopefully. And others feel like they're a scene from a movie that, like, I wonder what happened around those characters. Like, you're like the story that you guys wrote, the ADHD PI, like, feels like that's a fully realized character that, like, has a sort of an immaculate reality built around him ahead of the story, and then also after the story. Like, it ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and that hopefully gives you guys a prompt that, like, if you like how it turned out, like, I don't have to draw a full graphic novel with that character, but if you loved that character at that point, somebody else could, you know.
It's so funny because you talked about, like, how, like, you're working with all of these super talented people, super experienced people. Like, this is literally like the second thing we wrote, you know? Like,
well, honestly, I'm going to cut you off real quick. It's the third thing you wrote, because you guys sent one in that I was like, I liked it a lot, but I gave myself certain rules with the book that I wanted them to be, you know, as best we could do, crime, sci-fi, and you guys embraced that, but you went more of like superhero, and
right.
on top of that, you also threw in some pop culture references.
Yeah.
And I have nothing against that, but in this particular volume, I didn't want to brand it as anything in our world that you could really point. I didn't want to, like, put a bottle of Coca-Cola in there. Like,
Right.
you know, that would, like, ground it too hard in our world. I wanted it to feel a little bit distanced. Sorry,
we're still gonna get that page made. Like, I still really like if we were having some kind of marital competition, that was my script. That was, like, my idea.
I was gonna ask how you guys collaborated. We'll get to that in a second, but go for it. Okay.
So, like, that one was my idea, and then the ADHD PI was Brad's idea. So like, I lost. Brad won.
Yeah. Boy, I don't see it that way.
I know, of course you don't, because you were the winner and I was the loser.
This is the counseling part, right? This is the
That's right. You're counseling us.
That's right.
Okay.
I would say that the ADHD PI, though, was heavily inspired by your experience.
Right.
And that's how I knew I could sell the idea.
Which one of you has ADHD?
Me. I do.
I just learned that I do too.
Congratulations.
That was a new gift I learned about after my layoff as well.
Oh yeah. So that is like a revolution in creative people right now, as we're all realizing that we have ADHD. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. And I'm not saying that every artist does, but it does create this bit of chaos in your life where, like, I know, like, professionally, I'm a person who shows up, I get things done, you know, I'm seen as the super effective person. But if we were to move this camera, like, below here, you would just see shit everywhere. We're a mess. We're chaotic. You know, so that was a huge inspiration for the ADHD PI. And I do think that, like, my insight changed the plot of the story a lot.
It significantly did, because it had a different ending when it was my original idea.
Right.
And you gave it kind of like that ba-dum-dum ending.
Right.
Which really is pleasing to me.
Which is fun. Which is super fun.
Well, that was what was exciting about finally getting to see some of the other pages as you were sharing them on Instagram, or pieces of them on Instagram. And then on the Kickstarter page, you can see several pages now. And I just assumed everybody would create a similar structure. You know, like, I imagine the Twilight Zone, you got one page, I need like a rim shot, and then you're out. And then what you discover is there's every kind of story available. You know, there's mood pieces, there's Twilight Zone-esque stories, there's character-driven pieces. It's kind of incredible, the variety.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because you could see that when the stories were coming in, because a lot of the people, including pros, nobody wrote. There's no template for how to write a one-page comic story. There's no template for how to write comics. And I know people have, Bendis and a lot of people have thrown out like, this is what my scripts look like. Because a lot of aspiring writers want to see, like, what does a comic script look like? And a lot of people ask me, what does a comic script look like? What do you need? And the variety was all over the place on what I got. And I actually want to reproduce some of the images of what I got so that you guys can see, because it ranged from like a script, like what you guys sent, which was more of a like beat by beat outlined. And when I threw out like 1 to 6 panels, people were like, here's 9, and they're all full of words. And I'm like, this is where the collaboration comes in, because there's nothing to draw if I do that, and it's all crammed on the page. So I was hoping for like 1 or 2 panels for each of these stories, and I know that's like a big ask. And also, there's not a lot of story in 1 or 2 panels, but you do get to, for me, I get to like flex as the artist. So some of these that had more content to them forced me to figure out page layouts and how to tell a sequential story with more beats and things like that in a smaller format. So there was a lot for me to practice and kind of learn and exercise on. But what I got ranged from script pages to both of my kids are in the book, and one of them didn't write anything. We just talked. And I would draw panels, and he would, it was kind of Marvel method. He would see the panels and he'd be like, oh, like we could put a funny line in there, or, oh, have him do this, or, oh, have him do that. And then my other kid was like hesitant to give me one. I'm like, your brother's in the book. Are you going to give me a story? Are you going to give me a story? Are you going to give me a story? Finally, after weeks of like bothering him, he woke up all bleary one morning and sat down at the breakfast table. And I'm like, is today the day? You're going to give me a story? He's like, and he pulled out his phone, and in the notes tab, he typed for about 30 seconds and then sent it to me. He's like, does that work? And it was perfect. It was like beat for beat. I'm like, did you just write this? He's like, yes. I'm like, holy crap. Okay, great. So some people could like cough them out. And then other people, and I don't want to throw any pros under the bus, some pros that I approached wouldn't write me one. They're like, I can't write. And they're big names. And like, they're like, I can't do a 1-page. Some of them are like professional comics editors that are like, I can't write you a 1-page. I'm like, you're an editor. How could you, like, come on. One artist was like, I can't do this. I don't know, man. One page. And then I got an email with 3 stories. And I'm like, which one do I do? They all work. So I penciled 2 of them. I inked one of them finally and decided on one of them. So you may get the other 2 stories in this other little bonus thing that I'm talking about. Some of Jay Muth sent me a poem. He's like, I don't know, he's like, I wrote this morning. I don't know what it is. Do with it what you want. So I turned it into like there was no indication of anything. So it was kind of all over the map. It was almost like some people wrote their idea down on a napkin, and some people wrote me a professional script and put on their writer hat and pulled out their vintage, typewriter and got at it. So it was kind of all over the map. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did.
One of the things that we've learned from doing a ton of interviews with a ton of creators is like, there's really no wrong way to make a comic happen,
Right.
And I think like creatively, a lot of people get stuck on the idea. I know for Brad and I, a lot of like, we get stuck on the idea of like, okay, we don't know how to start. It's the starting the thing. Like, I think like you just throwing it out there to any creative person, like, I want a 1-page story. We're like, okay, awesome, an assignment. We can do an assignment. That gives us a place to start. And I wonder, like, if with the people who are more professional, who have a set method of getting things done, maybe it is a little bit harder to change it up and do something in a whole new way to make a whole new thing happen.
It completely is. And it's not healthy to have a formula that you fall back on that you're comfortable with. You don't grow as an artist. So like, again, getting back to me, because it's all about me.
Yes, please.
Like doing this and handing other people assignments was a way for me to grow. Like, it was a way for me to keep learning. If I'm not going to be a student until the day I die, then what's the point? I need to be learning something every time I'm doing something. That's not to knock anybody that's got a system and knows what they're doing and likes what they're doing. I also have systems for how I do certain things, and I know I can work quickly and get something done if I fall back on a template of how I've worked in the past. But a lot of times it's more gratifying and I'm more proud of work that I had to struggle with a little bit. And by struggle, I mean work a puzzle. Like a lot of people look at these things as a chore, or like, it's stressful and I don't know how to, and it's like, if you're stressed out by something you're telling me you want to do as a career, you're going down the wrong path. Like I've worked with story artists and I've mentored people who were like, I just don't like drawing. And it's like, if you don't like drawing, you're in the wrong, you can't be doing this. You have to love drawing to the point that it's the same thing as writing a birthday card to somebody. Like you don't think about, well, maybe that's a bad example, but like you don't think about when you're physically writing, the act of writing. And when you're an artist and drawing for a living, most of the time you're not thinking about the act of drawing. You're just communicating the idea. You already know the alphabet. You already know how to handwrite to a certain extent. So you're not concentrating on the craft. Well, you should be. But you've opened yourself up to being able to do the next step in communicating why I'm making these marks. What am I trying to say with these marks?
On the Kickstarter page, again, you have a little bit of a preview of the prologue, and it seems that you are working out a lot of your anxieties that you experienced post Pixar and going into this, I guess I'll call it Brave New World, but horrible new world.
Dystopian present.
With AI. Can you talk a little bit about the therapeutic hints that we're getting in the prologue and epilogue of this book?
Yeah, I rewrote versions of a prologue and epilogue. I don't know how many times. I use the Notes app on my phone when I'm writing, and usually I'm like every morning I try to take like a 2 to 4 mile hike around like our area, through the woods and streets and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like a dummy, like walking into things because I'm like, I'll pull out my phone and I'll be writing down ideas. So I've rewritten that prologue and epilogue multiple times because different things that I want to say, like it occurred to me at a certain point, like none of these stories are really mine, but it's my book and I want to be able to say something with it. Why am I doing this book? So the prologue and epilogue was a way of of tying that all together. I wanted to say things about Alan Spiegel. I wanted to say things about all the things we're talking about, like why you do art and all those things. I wanted to say things about the situation of leaving a company after 20 years and knowing that that company doesn't define who you are. And I like to think I wasn't a big moper or whiner after being asked to leave after 20 years, because I wasn't the only there were 200 of us. It's just a sign of the industry. The reality is I contributed a lot there. I was in a leadership position and I wasn't leading anything at the time. It was time for me to when you work in movies and comics, it's gig based most of the time. You don't work for one studio for your whole life. And Pixar was the opposite of that. They employ people for your whole life, they're your employer and you jump from project to project. It isn't like you came there for one project and left after that. So I had been fortunate enough to have worked in the entertainment industry for about 10 years before I got to Pixar. And I know how that gig-based economy kind of works and that you do hustle from job to job. And doing comics, I know how that hustle works. A lot of people didn't that were part of this layoff. Pixar was the only place they had ever worked. So I tried to keep in mind this idea of this is not my career. Pixar was not my career. Pixar was a stepping stone on the path of my career. Every job you do is a job, but it's not your career. Your career is being a storyteller, and you're going to do that until the day you die. It's just you were on a lot of cobblestones that were a P and I and X and A and an R for 20 years. That doesn't mean that you can't step off of them and onto other cobblestones. So I tried to look at it in that way. When I was writing the prologue and epilogue, though, I here's the ADHD. I was all over the map with what I was trying to say with this prologue and epilogue. But I did want to ping AI, where we're at in the modern world, politically, where we're at in the world, how people are passed over, for when they still got juice in their engine, what it can do to rattle people. So the prologue and epilogue that I ended up with, when you see it and read the whole thing, you'll see a character who is a more drastic version of somebody being asked to move on. than what I actually went through. There's actually another full prologue and epilogue that I finished. That's, again, potentially going to be in the stretch reward. That is a slightly different version of what we're talking about, like how you get over and how you move forward in your career and how you jump from cobblestone to cobblestone on the path along the way. But that was kind of the thinking with the prologue and the epilogue, was to talk about some topical things, try to have something meaningful to say. I think about other mentors who I didn't know, but almost feel like you did know, and we all have these people, but like Rod Serling is one of those people for me. And Rod, his work was very thrown into the bucket of like science fiction and fantasy because of the Twilight Zone and, Night Gallery and Planet of the Apes. But that's not what made Rod Rod. What made Rod and his work important was that he was talking about topical social issues and things that were happening in the world, like relevant things. And I tried to keep that in mind. He would sometimes, like the Twilight Zone, he would dress them in fantasy so that the meal would be a little more enticing, as you trick people into this moral lesson sometimes. So I try to keep that in mind in what we do with fantasy and comics and animation and movies, is to make it charming with the appeal of like the other, but at the same time talk about relevant, meaningful things. So that leaked its way into the book in its own way too.
Let's go ahead and pause for just a moment because we got to hear from our sponsors. Love sci-fi, love horror, love fantasy, love action?
I do.
Then 2000 AD is the greatest comic you're not reading. 2000 AD has a whole universe of characters from Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog to Rogue Trooper, Shakara Halo Jones, and the poor sod slogging across the cursed earth in the Helltrekkers.
In every weekly issue, you'll get 5 action-packed thrills from incredible creators such as Garth Ennis, Rob Williams, Arthur Wyatt, Henry Flint, Alex DeCampi, Dan Abnett, and many more. Get a print subscription to your door every week, and your first issue is free.
Or subscribe digitally. Get free back issues and download DRM-free copies of each issue for just $9 a month. That's 128 pages of incredible comics every month for less than $10. And all subscribers get amazing offers like money off vouchers and exclusive products.
Head to 2000AD.com and click on subscribe now, or download the 2000AD app and start reading today. Link in the show notes. As a person who discovers that they have ADHD in their adulthood, I feel extremely privileged. A lot of people who are non-neurotypical, they have stories where they do crash and burn, and where they have really hard adulthoods. Yeah. Where like I'm pretty lucky. I've been allowed to kind of float and be creative, and like I'm a freelancer. I make my own schedule and all of that stuff. And I discover, like in retrospect, I tried to teach in a classroom. It didn't work. That was too much for me. That was the closest I came to crash and burn. But I realized, okay, retrospectively, my entire adulthood was an accommodation, where I was struggling in a way, but I had the room to make it work. Do you see the same thing in your adulthood where you go like, oh my God, like, I'm sure you've had your challenges, but you did, despite your non-neurotypicalness, find a path for yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I will caveat all of this with the asterisks of I am very privileged and fortunate that I have a supportive family.
Same. Big time same.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that we have support for us to never grow up in some ways.
Yes.
But at the same time, that same support, if we're being honest with ourselves, we get to look at that. It's a mirror to ourselves where we can have that moment of clarity and that moment of realization that I need to step up in the areas where I stumble a lot, and I know I can do better. I can be focusing more at home. I can be focusing more on my kids. I can be focusing more on my friends and their lives and what's going on with them. What we do is a superpower, but it's a superpower of locking ourselves in a room by ourselves and entertaining ourselves. We are kids who we're still kids who can play without friends. We make up friends. We make up imaginary worlds. We make up places, and we're at a point where we fully realize them. They are universes we can go live in and be completely content. The reality is like you still need to like brush your teeth and go make food and remember to use the bathroom and like feed the dog that you decided to adopt because you love dogs. Like, or ask your wife how their day went. Ask their kids what's going on and how can I support what you're doing. Are your friends okay? Are you looking out for your friends? Are you being a good parent and helping them become good kids, good people, good citizens in the world? Can you contribute to society in a way that's healthy? Can you vote? Can you be aware of the issues when you vote? Can you concentrate on all this stuff? Can you get your taxes done? Like all those things are, without that support system we're talking about, I would set them, had it just
They're
been
so
me.
effortful. They're so effortful. Like, like just being a good friend is like so freaking effortful, and
Yeah.
you do need
Living
those
is the
reminders.
job. Living is the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Creative is not the job.
Right.
Creative is like playtime. That's dreaming. Like we're lucky enough that we get to dream for a living if we're lucky, and create but with that, it's also remembering I'm not doing this just for me. I need an audience. Like what we do communicates with people. So if you don't go out and live that life and put in the work, put in the effort you're talking about, you don't have anything to say. You don't have a conversation to have with an audience. There's no reason. You're just masturbating at that point. Like
Right.
it can be joyful, but at the same time, like, how are you contributing? How are you becoming better as the artist by learning from the reaction to the audience?
It's been so thrilling to see the response to the Kickstarter be as strong as it has been. And we are now in the process of talking stretch goals and making stretch goals the goal. Was that a surprise to you? Does it encourage you to do more projects like this one?
Um, I'm pleasantly surprised. I went in optimistic. Like we've all got friends who have had bombs of a Kickstarter, and we've all got friends who have had very great reactions on Kickstarter. I think part of the reaction in the world of why Kickstarter is showing to be a successful model is because comic shops are going away, which is kind of sad. Like we jumped on it, talking with Scott Zobak, the publisher, on this, and he's in the book as well. He's Alan Spiegel's nephew, and he runs Alan Spiegel Fine Arts now. And he's also one of my best friends. He's a really good friend. We get each other. We were going to do the book either way. Like the book was going to come out. Like we were going to publish it traditionally. But the more we talked about it, we're like, it isn't so much about, it is about the money. We would like the money to come in so that we can hopefully pay creators. We can hopefully show the world this is viable and important. And I think we're showing that with the numbers that are coming in. But at the same time, it was more of a matter of building up a list of how do we get these books directly into people's hands, because Diamond isn't going to help us. And traditional distribution outlets are confusing for people to order, for shop owners to order from. Not that Kickstarter's any less confusing, but like this way, at least the fans who do know me and the other creators in the book and like-minded creators that are now in the book, that community, it's a way to build a community, and it's a way to grow a reliable audience that does actually want these in their hands. They're not going to sit on a shelf. The ones that are selling are literally going to go to people who are going to read them, which is why we wanted to do the book to begin with. So that was kind of the hope of the Kickstarter. I'd love to do more projects like it. It turns out that I think I know what my next likely 4 graphic novels are.
Okay.
As of this week, some things have lined up in my life that I'm very excited about and can't believe are going to happen. But they're not Kickstarter at the moment, at least. They're in the planning stages, but they're pretty exciting. I can't say what they are.
Yay! Well, we're
Offline,
excited
I'll
too.
tell you, but like, I'm very excited about what they are. That doesn't mean that like there might not be another, like, I got to break free and do something else to like we do need to do another Kickstarter for something. I think it's a viable model, and I've got other friends that are like looking at this as a viable model. Like Jimmy Palmiotti has very much said like Kickstarter is the way. Jim Mahfood's recent book,
oh my gosh,
huge success. I just got mine in the mail yesterday. So proud of him, like, and excited for him, because like that makes this viable for us to keep doing comics the way we like doing them. seeing Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones's new books coming out, the Dracula books, like those
So
are
good.
It's great that those are happening.
Yeah.
And through Kickstarter. I'm thankful that Kickstarter's there. I mean, when you look at the Kickstarter page and you see the other Kickstarters coming up, you're like, it is a little bit of a comic shop now. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know that this Ink Runs Cold looks like any of these other books. And at the same time, that's perfect. It shouldn't look like any other book on the shelf. Kickstarter's just a strange comic shop shelf in some ways now.
Yeah. And it's such a gift to your future self. We love getting our Kickstarters in the mail. When like literally yesterday we came home and there were 3 books on our doorstep. We're like, yes.
You forget you bought these things sometimes, and it's almost like Christmas. Like, who sent me a present?
Oh, it was me.
Oh, I did
Thanks,
6
me.
months ago.
Yeah. Scott, is there anything about this Ink Runs Cold that we haven't talked about that you would want to mention before the conversation ends?
I want to throw a lot of love to Jose Villarrubia.
Oh my God.
Yes, the colors are gorgeous.
So Jose and I have been good buddies for a long time. We've never worked together, but at Comic-Con every year he comes up. It's like family coming up. We give a big hug. We talk about families. We talk about like, when are you coming to Spain? When are you going to come visit? When are you going to come teach? Like all these different things. And he came up and he always hangs out and watches as I'm doing drawings, and I'll talk with him about how he works, and always got a smile on his face. But he's always very practical when we talk about things too. And as I was working, it kind of occurred to me in the moment, because this was just going to be a black and white book. Like I wanted it to feel like noir. I wanted it to feel like, the ink, the tones from the ink washes. And as he was standing there, like talking, I'm like, Jose, I want you to write one of these, but at the same time, I'm only going to color it if you want to color it. What do you think about that? And he's like, I think I see how to do it. It won't take a lot. It's just like 1 or 2 colors. I think we could do it. I'm like, perfect. Whatever you want to do, that can be your contribution to this, even if you don't want to write one. He's like, oh, I want to write one too. But I'm like, because the color could be your version of contributing to writing. Like and he's like, no, can I write one too? Of course you can write one. I'm like, but let's do a color version. And then, we'll do the black and white version too, just so that I can scratch both itches and get to work with my friend, and also show artists that like pages are going to come in and look very like the pipeline of the evolution of what happens to your work as it grows in comics changes with every single hand that touches it and every single step that kind of comes along. So seeing the color come in was a real like, wow, I didn't expect it to look this cool or this different than how I saw it in my head. And for me, that was probably like your experience, correct me if I'm wrong, where you wrote something, sent it to me, and then I sent you a page and you're like, wow, I didn't expect it to look like that.
Right.
I mean, hopefully in a good way.
No.
Yeah,
It could have
wonderful
also been
way.
like, God, he really.
No, Scott.
Thrilling way. And I do think that the colors are still so in the spirit of noir, because noir is all about vibes, and the colors are vibes.
Yeah.
And he approached it from that sort of like hyper vibrant atomic age comics publishing feel, which is very much like pop culture, from that era. So like it's fresh, but at the same time it's also evocative of kind of paying tribute to that era, to the era of comics and storytelling that was sort of the platform for this Ink Runs Cold.
Yeah.
I thought about doing a second volume. Now that this other project is lined up, I don't know what that second volume might look like, but I'll throw it out right now that the second volume would likely be called That'll Leave a Mark. Love stories from the Western crime zone. So added to crime and sci-fi would be Westerns and romance. So I wanted to try to honor the 40s, 50s, 60s, like what were the popular genres at the, of those eras, but then also branch out a little bit more. So volume 2 potentially would be That'll Leave a Mark.
Oh man.
All these titles that are just a mouthful that people will forget.
Well, we got to get this one out in the world first.
Yes.
And everyone can find links in the show notes to the Kickstarter page. And, you're going to want this book on your shelf. Maybe you want both versions of this book, the color version and the noir version on your shelf. We certainly do. And you are offering on-site pickup to those that are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con.
Which is
Yeah,
so
I mean,
fun.
honestly, that's preferable. Everybody saves money, and we can actually shake your hand, and I can sign your book and probably other writers can sign your book.
We'll just be walking around, and if somebody asks us to sign our book, we will do a backflip. Not literally, but emotionally.
Well, I mean, the hope is that you'll hang out at the Alan Spiegel booth for, find a little window to hang out and at least sign a bunch for us to have these are also, you're lucky that you came by Comic-Con. If you didn't buy it on the Kickstarter, you'll maybe get some additional signatures in there. We'll set 50 on the side and get as many
Considering we've done very little writing, our signatures are very rare.
There you go. There are some, I love being at conventions because you'll see anthologies, or at least I'm fortunate enough that I'll see anthologies show up, or I'll see books show up that I forgot I contributed to, that people have hunted down that want a signature on them, like a back cover that I did for somebody, or a little snippet of some illustration I did in a Star Wars magazine 30 years ago, or something like weird things will pop up. And I know that there are anthology books like the Batman black and white book that people will go around and try to get every signature in. You can't possibly get every signature in This Ink Runs Cold because Alan Spiegel's one of the writers in it, and he's passed away. We found, his story posthumously as we've been going through his things and adapted it. It was much longer, but adapted it. So there are certain people, and like, my friends from high school, my kids, like, you're likely not going to get their signatures. like random people that are in the book that were part of the submission process, like you guys, can't come to Comic-Con. They live in a different country. Comic-Con's out of their budget. They can't make it. So it'll be a holy grail if you got, 99% of the signatures out of it.
Man, people love a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for hanging out and talking This Ink Runs Cold. It's a real pleasure for us.
It's a thrill.
It's a pleasure for me, you guys. Thank you so much. Very, very cool. And I can't see what you guys do next.
Oh, man.
I mean, besides the podcast, of course. I'm excited for every single episode of the podcast, but can't see what you put out of your minds and your hearts onto a page.
Yeah, it's definitely awoken something in us that we hope to fulfill. So
good.
We'll see.
Good. Thank you again.
And there you go, our conversation with Scott Morse talking about This Ink Runs Cold, short stories from the Space-Crime Continuum. Again, there is a link in the show notes to the Kickstarter page. You have less than a week to get your copy, or copies if you decide to get the colorized version and the noir edition. And they did hit that stretch goal where you now get a copy of The Brush-Offs, a whole new extra book that is going to be filled with bonus material and the things that Scott was just talking about.
How did you like Scott turning the microphone on us and starting to ask us questions? That's rude and unprecedented.
Yeah, it's definitely unprecedented.
Put us on the spot.
Yeah, again, it's such an honor to be a part of this collection. I know that it is only a one-page story, but I do think it's one of the best things that Lisa and I have ever written in collaboration together. The ADHD PI, which was originally called the ADHD Detective, and it was Scott who went, hey, why don't we call it the ADHD PI and keep those initials going?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, yeah,
Clearly.
that's what collaboration is. What a great idea. And, as he talked about a little bit there, about seeing your script finally interpreted into art, that must be, a surreal experience. And we said, yeah, it really was. What we didn't tell him is that when he finally sent us the art for the ADHD PI, I think I read that one page 30 times.
Yeah.
Just that night over and over and over again, because I couldn't believe that Scott Morse had interpreted something that Lisa and I had written and done such a good job and elevated our script to something I think is really magical.
It was hard talking to him because there is just no level of gratitude. I'm afraid if we really showed our level of gratitude, we would just entirely scare him away.
Yeah. I love artists so much, and I know you do too. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody who listens to our podcast on the regular knows that we can't help but fall into extreme flattery when talking with creators.
And that was us playing it cool.
And that was
we were
playing it cool,
still
yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
enthusiastic.
And it was even more challenging
Yeah.
in this conversation. But I'm just so grateful to Scott for inviting us into this space to tell this story. And, I think this is a story that is a lot more than its bada-bump format. If you read the comic on the Kickstarter page, you can see that, it's like, my life is growing chaotic. I'm tired. I'm great at my job, but my life is a mess. And this ADHD PI saves the day in one way, and in the process burns down his home.
Yeah,
as a result of his ADHD.
It's like he got press badges to WonderCon. What a tremendous accomplishment. But he left his purse on the other side of security.
Yeah, like there are these moments for Lisa that just become, nightmare scenarios.
Yeah.
And I don't know, talk a little bit more about, why this story is personal to you specifically, Lisa.
Well, like at one stage of the story, so like we said in the interview, the ADHD detective was Brad's idea. But in the original idea, he was going to have the detective not save the girl.
Right.
And the girl would
die as a result of his ADHD.
And I pointed out to him, like, that's not really how ADHD works. Like,
And also maybe it's offensive.
yeah, well, like, to me, like, the thing with ADHD is if something is your hyperfocus, if your passion is rescuing people, that's the thing that you are not going to screw up, right? Like, if, I have a huge performance coming up, or I have to write an article, or I have to show up at a place on time, that's not going to be the thing that I screw up. The thing that I screw up are the things that I do for myself, like carry my purse out of the airport, or, go to the do follow-ups with the doctor, or, like whatever.
Or maintain a tidy residence.
Right.
And if you pinch and zoom on the ADHD PI page, and I don't think you can really see it in the low res format that's on the Kickstarter page, but when you get the book, you can see that Scott has really sold how sloppy the ADHD PI's kitchen is, his living room, and his car. Like,
yeah,
he's living in a squalor.
As are we.
As are we.
And it does sometimes feel like a double life, where I leave the home, I look put together, I go do my job, I have everything that I need. I'm known as a person who shows up professional and prepared. But then if anybody was to see the state in which I live, they would be like, is this a rodent person? Like, what? I often refer to myself as a raccoon. Like, I'm just like a rat with hands.
Yeah, and, we don't devote our money to the things that most people would devote their money to, like a nice bed, a couch that's not crushing
broken
it on itself. It's, what is it, concave?
Yeah.
We have like a concave couch that the love seat forces us into each other's lap.
I sometimes wish we had, like, a lot of people that we know, like, that are like us. Like, like sometimes sloppy people end up with put together people.
Yeah.
And that's not how it worked out for us.
Yeah.
We need one more spouse.
Right.
One more spouse. One more
where
spouse.
we do put our money is into,
our
let's
passions.
Get Daredevil #5.
Hey, let's do a podcast. Hey, let's drop everything and go to LA.
Yeah. And we sleep on the floor.
Yeah,
Okay. So yes, the ADHD PI is a version of Lisa and myself by proxy.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just a sloppy person.
Well, Well, we don't know.
We don't know, I guess, yeah.
Brad is a mystery.
Yeah.
I'm all figured out.
But there you go. I hope you enjoyed this episode, all parts of it. We had a great time having this conversation with Scott. And man, we're just so excited for This Ink Runs Cold to be in our hands and to be in your hands. Let us know if you back it. Let us know if you're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con and you want your copy signed by us. We'll make that happen.
We'll meet you somewhere.
And if you're not going to be at San Diego Comic-Con and you want your copy signed, we'll figure it out. You know, we're on a road trip. July 12th is going to be our comic shop road trip that will climax at San Diego Comic-Con. We're launching on July 12th at 4-Color Fantasies in Winchester, Virginia, and we're landing on July 22nd at Now or Never Comics in downtown San Diego.
I just had an idea.
Yeah.
What if you backed the comic and you would like our signature to put in the book, let us know and give us your address and we'll sign a sticker and then we'll just send that to you like a book plate, but it's a sticker.
We can do that. We can do that. We'll figure it out.
We'll do something.
We're just excited.
Yeah.
We're just really, really excited. But that is going to do it for this week's episode. We have launched our April programming.
Yay!
Coming off of a month that was absolutely spectacular. Our March numbers, our March episodes were so good. Thank you, everyone who has been listening and sharing these episodes. Please continue to do so. We're extremely excited about our April programming. Next week, we are going to continue our Spectrum Book Club with creators Rick Quinn and Dave Chisholm. Over on the Patreon feed, we've got a lot going on as well. We just had an episode with Nick Dragata talking about Absolute Bane. He goes into some details, some teases about how that Bane is going to be a lot more than what you've seen on that cover for issue 9.
He's bigger.
He's bigger, but there's going to be multiple iterations of Bane in the series. And so we talk about that a little bit. Also on the Patreon, we have our Gallivanting Through the Green, a Swamp Thing book club podcast that we're doing. We just wrapped up issue 22, and we are going to talk about issue 23 at the end of this week.
Our next comic book film club at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia, co-sponsored by 4-Color Fantasies, will be Robert Altman's Popeye on April 13th at 5 p.m. I'm so excited.
It's going to come complete with a virtual introduction from writer Chris Condon of That Texas Blood fame.
How fun.
And 4-Color Fantasies just launched its annual sketch cover charity auction benefiting the literacy volunteers of the Winchester area. You could go over to their Facebook page and message them and bid on original art from folks like Chip Zdarsky and Sean Phillips, our buddy Mark Jackson, who else?
So
Tyler Crook.
many.
Like some really incredible pieces that you can usually get for a great deal.
We hate promoting this auction because we want these comics and we want them at a price we can afford.
I don't even want to tell you how much we got our Jeff Lemire Batman Shadow piece for. It was $30.
But it's for literacy.
Yeah, it's for literacy. So
which we like, I guess.
Donate well. Donate often, donate big. But there you go. Lisa.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
Sure. Where can our listeners send the words of affirmation to you? Short and sweet.
Short
like a
and sweet.
one-pager.
You can find me on most social medias at Mouthdork, although I'm spending most days these days on Blue Sky. If you have words of affirmation for our logos, send them to Jesse Lonergan at Jesse Lonergan on Blue Sky or on Instagram, Jesse.Lonergan. Lisa, where can our listeners send the words of affirmation to you?
I'm always accepting words of affirmation. I'm at Sidewalk Siren on some social medias. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Apple Podcasts, or whatever app you choose. We're everywhere. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on all the socials at CBCC Podcast.
If you'd like us to touch you physically, you can wear our merch. tpublic.com/ patreon.com/store/comic book couples counseling, divided by hyphens.
I gotta slow down. I'm way too excited this episode.
Okay, yeah.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Audible or Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to do an active service, why not write a review or leave a comment on the show while you're there?
We are fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy. Bum bum ba da bum bum ba da ba.
We did it.